Hello, my name is Joe Robertson with Move On Technology, and this video is intended for law firms to help them with the discovery process in the high-tech and complex industry of cybersecurity. Whether we like it or not, technology is now required for most companies to deliver their services to clients. Oftentimes along the way, we collect data on our clients that they would probably rather not have leaked out to the outside world. Yet every day in the news, we read about new cybersecurity breaches for companies big and small. Whenever I read public disclosures on cybersecurity breaches, I often get the sense that companies feel they were overwhelmed by a sophisticated attacker and nothing could have been done to prevent this. While that may be true in some cases, I often find that this was simply a mistake or an error in not following simple process and procedure that was documented. So the first thing that's important to understand is how a company goes about protecting their data. Most large companies, and many medium and small-sized companies, align to cybersecurity frameworks. Cybersecurity frameworks are a set of controls that instruct an IT department and or security department on how to go about securing their systems. The two most common cybersecurity frameworks in use today are NIST and the ISO 27000 series. These general operational controls are both very similar, and to follow precisely, a company should find themselves in a very mature cybersecurity posture. There are also some industry-specific controls and government regulations worth noting, such as HIPAA, PCI, CCPA, GDPR, and CMMC. So when performing discovery on a cybersecurity breach, one of the first questions you should be asking is what controls did this organization use to secure their data? Even if a company states that they do not align to one of these frameworks, they should still have their own set of process and procedure in place that mirror these frameworks. Regardless if a company aligns to a common framework or not, you'll always want to request a company's internal policies and procedures as it relates to IT and security. Some common names for these documents are IT Operations Manual, Security Operations Manual, and Incident Response Plan. There are many others that may come into play as well, but those are just some examples. The reason these documents are important is because it should spell out the exact process and procedure a company should have taken to align to these frameworks. And if a company did truly align to a framework, it's unlikely a breach should have risen to a level where they needed to disclose it. So let's take a look at some example disclosures to see how we can drill down to what went wrong and when. Now these examples are based on real-world incidents, but they have been modified slightly for this presentation. In this example, a legacy system was compromised, resulting in unauthorized access. The legacy system was not as secure as our production system. The legacy system was kept online due to legal hold needs. This, unfortunately, is a very common issue that I see companies get themselves in trouble with, where they have an old system, but for whatever reason, they can't retire it because they need to access that old data. There are ways to handle this, including a baseline configuration, which regardless of how old it is, still needs to have the same minimum security standards applied to it, and then there are a number of different methods to properly archive this data off and retrieve it should the legal hold need arise. And these are the relevant controls for all of that. You can probably find more that apply to the situation if you dig further. So in addition to the operations manual, which you should have already received in discovery, I'd be asking for communications on the decision to leave the server online, any risk exceptions that were filled out or not filled out, and basically how did they come to the decision to just leave the server online forever and ever and ever, just in case they needed it for legal hold. Here's another example. After our system was taken offline with ransomware, we went to restore from backup. Unfortunately, the backups have been failing for the last 3 months due to a database upgrade from version 9 to version 10, resulting in the permanent loss of client data. Here is another situation companies commonly get themselves into, where they get ransomware or they lose data for whatever reason, they go back to restore backups and they're not able to. And they end up paying the ransomware, or they just lose the data altogether if they don't want to pay it. So how does things like this happen? Well, they really shouldn't. And here are some controls that prevent that, including regular testing of your backups, which every company should be doing, and a change control process. When you do common upgrades like this, you should be notifying all the stakeholders, such as the backup team, that you performed an upgrade so they can get in and make sure that their backups work after an upgrade like this. IT is much more segmented than it used to be, and there are many different teams that may need to participate in these upgrades to make sure systems are working, and things like this are often missed. So in discovery, I would absolutely be asking for the change control logs on this upgrade so they can see who all was involved and figure out why the backup team wasn't. Last example for this video, a customer service representative fell victim to a successful phishing attack. The employee had access to customer data due to the job responsibilities, leading to the threat actor downloading the entire customer database. Here's another cybersecurity error that companies will often make, which is over-provisioning access. While I do find it likely that this employee needed access to do their job, they probably didn't need this level of access that allowed a threat actor to use their account to download the entire database. There are controls in place for account management and least privilege access to give an employee just the level of access they need to do their job and no more. Oftentimes, I find that these mistakes are made during the new hire process where people are given just broad access, so there's no question whether they have access or not to do their job. They have access to everything. So I would be asking for discovery documents in relation to the new hire process, how they hand out access to new hires, as well as how often do they audit that level of access that employees have, and what were the results of that audit. So that's all for this video. We live in an increasingly technical and complicated world. That doesn't mean the result of a cybersecurity breach was complicated. We often find that companies simply didn't follow the process or procedure they had written down on paper, and had they, the breach probably wouldn't have been as bad as it ended up being.